good evening. Welcome to Life Bridge. If we haven't met yet, my name is Grant, and as we get started today with our first Saturday night service, I just wanted to kind of set one rule down for all of our volunteers because we have so many volunteers that have come to help greet and do children's ministry, and we'll just kind of pass this along, okay? This is one rule. If you're coming tomorrow to church, you can wear the same outfit, okay? And the reason I wanted to establish that is because that's what I'm going to do. I mean, this doesn't just happen, okay? I put a lot of work into that. Anyway, just so excited. There's so much energy. I was honestly, when we started Saturday night service, just 2 bits before we get into the content for today. When we started Saturday night service, I was like, oh man, come fall, that's going to be like football, right? That's going to be college football time. I'm going to be doing church. Like, this is my cross, right, to bear for the name of Jesus. And honestly, as I sat here tonight for our first Saturday night service, I thought, what am I talking about? There is no other place that I'd rather be on a set. Even during the middle of football season, there's no place I'd rather be than praising God with the likes of you on a Saturday night. So anyway, plus there's just a lot of energy in the room. Bill, just a lot more energy on Saturday night than on Sunday. You'll have to come on a Sunday sometime to figure that out. Anyway, just wanted to come today. We're starting a new series, and today we're talking about this one thing within inside of each and every one of us that it's almost like its own personality. And I'm going to call it this way. Throughout the series, I'm going to refer to it as an imposter. There is this imposter inside of us that is so strong and so emotional that it is controlling our lives, and in many ways, in all ways, it is destroying our lives. And it's this one thing. We're going to talk 3 weeks about pride. Doesn't that sound like fun? So we're going to talk about that for 3 weeks. We're going to talk about your pride. And this is one thing that directs and destroys our life in so many ways. Now, I just want you to imagine if you were on a desert island and you had never read the Bible before, and all of a sudden you were introduced to the Bible and you picked it up and you started reading the Bible. It wouldn't take you very long to figure out that pride is God's #1 pet peeve. God's #1 pet peeve. It makes God angrier than any other sin or any other attitude in Scripture, and God is always against the prideful, and He's always for the humble. And a couple reasons, here's a couple of examples. In the book of Leviticus, God introduces to His people, the Israelites, for the first time, He introduces His law to the people. And what He says to them is He says, hey, listen, if you remember my law, if you are humble and you follow after my law, things are going to go really good for you. But if you are prideful, if you forget me, then I'm going to be angry with you. And this is what he says, Leviticus in chapter 26 says this, I will break down your stubborn pride and make the sky above you like iron and the ground beneath you like bronze. It's going to be really hard for you to grow crops. It's going to be really hard for you to exist. It's really going to be hard. I'm going to hem you out in, and it's going to be hard above you and it's going to be hard below you because of your pride. Another one. I could give you 100 examples of this. Another one I'll give you nice out of the book of Proverbs just goes like this. The Lord detests all the proud of heart. Be sure of this, they will not go unpunished. Now, you might be sitting out there going, well, why does God hate it so much? We don't have a hard time with that because honestly, you and I, we're the same way. We hate pride. And it's so easy for us to see in other people, right? It's so easy for us to see in other people. It's really hard for us to see in ourselves, but when we see it in other people, that's the same way we think. We detest it, and if we had unlimited power like God does, we'd punish it too, wouldn't we? When we see pride and we see somebody with arrogance and we work with somebody and we saw pride in somebody else, we'd be like, you know what you need? You need to be taken down a couple notches. And if we had unlimited power, that's exactly what we do. And God looks at us, and that's what He does. He looks around the world, And he finds people with pride, and he opposes the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Now, why does he hate it so much? And why do we hate it in other people? And why is it such a big deal? Well, the problem with pride goes really down deep. And I just want to say before we get into this, you already know this, okay? You showed up tonight to hear a bunch of stuff that you already know. In fact, a lot of what we say here is stuff you already know. But, and this is important to hear, but some of the most important things that we could ever hear in our life is stuff that we already need to know. So about half of what I'm going to say today, we already know. But we're going to take that extra step, and we're actually going to do something with the information we know. So, a bunch of stuff you already know. The problem with pride is, number one, it's the sin that leads to all other sins. That's what is so difficult about pride, because our pride leads to all other sins. Now, if you think about that for a second, you might be sitting out there going, well, I get how it leads to this, I get how it leads to that, but I don't. All sins? Yeah, all sins. Because I can guarantee you this. Every destructive thing that you have ever done or will do, every attitude that you had that hurt somebody else, or anything that you've done to hurt anybody, or anything that you've ever done to hurt yourself, all came from this one move. Us going, well, I know what God's word says, but, or I don't even care. I don't know what it says, but I'm not interested in what God wants from me. Or I think, but I'm not even going to humble myself enough to try to find out what God wants. All sin stems from us plugging our ears and going, I don't really care. I can figure it out on my own. I just got to do me. And that's where everything comes from. And that's why God hates it, because God's like, hey, if I can't get you to be humble and approach me and come to me, then I got nothing. There is nothing to work with here. Second one, and again, you know this, and you've watched it happen. Second one is it isolates us from people we love. We watch this happen over and over again. You have this same problem over and over again. The people you work with, your friends, your boss, your employees, over and over and over again, you watch this pride, this imposter come up inside of you. And you watch it happen. And you start seeing it in other people's lives, and your pride is what's killing that relationship. And here's what's funny. Your pride just kept you from hearing what I just said. I mentioned your boss and pride in the same sentence, and all you can think about is how arrogant he is, or how arrogant she is, or how much pride they have. And your pride is keeping you from looking at your own pride, and it's just looking at their pride. I didn't say their pride. I said your pride is destroying that relationship. Or in a marriage, it all comes down to it. It all comes down to pride. There's so many times. You may have had a fight, right? It's Saturday. I don't know what it is about Saturday, but usually we have a fight once a Saturday with my spouse. Anyway, you might have had a fight on the way here today, and here's what you do. And every one of us plays this little game where we try to figure out what percentage we're wrong. And pride keeps reminding us of our percentage. And we go, well, yeah, I'm probably like 10% in the wrong, but that doesn't make up for their 90%. And so what we really need to do is we need to work on that 90%, because that's the problem. And pride keeps us focused on that 90%. And the other thing that pride does is it keeps us from really getting a good idea of the real percentage, right? Some of you are sitting beside your spouse like, don't do this to me, man. Don't do this to me. I was winning. I was on top. And now you're killing me. Pride tries to convince you that you have this like small percentage of the pie, but the thing is, it's blinding you. And the truth is, it's probably more like 50-50, and you can't even see it. Even right now, you're like, oh, no, it ain't. It is. It's 50-50. And on top of that, that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is actually you're the 80 and he's the 20, or she's the 20. And we look at that, and pride keeps us from doing that, and we watch it happen in our life. And especially when it comes to our kids, right? If you've got a teenager, you need to understand this. The problem with your teenager isn't that they're a moron. They are a moron, but that's just being That's not the problem. They are one. And I've got kids, and they know they're morons. Anyway, that's not the problem, though. The problem is they need somebody to get down with them and to take a few shots across the bow on your own chin. They need somebody to love with them and work with them and be able to kind of get down in the mess of what it means to be a kid. And they need you to lead and loving and guide and teach. And you want that too, but honestly, at the end of the day, I hope you can hear this. At the end of the day, you'd rather be right. You'd rather win the argument. You'd rather be respected. You'd rather teach them the proper pecking order. And the proper pecking order is I'm on top and I'm the smartest person in the room and you are down below me. And you'd rather have that than to be what they need. And pride is killing all of our relationships, and we know it. That's the thing. We watch it happen, and we get this idea. We have a fight with our spouse or our kids or employee or something like that, and we walk away and we have this little conversation with ourselves, and we're like, you know what I ought to do? I ought to admit, I ought to work on my percent, and this is what I did. And we just get this really humble thought that pops into our head, and then pride puffs up and says, but how are they ever going to learn? If you apologize, if we go to them, if we say, how are they ever going to get the point? How are they ever going to learn? And pretty soon pride takes over in our life, and we watch this imposter, and we know this, come into our life and isolate and destroy us from every relationship we have. And we wouldn't do that with anything else. You wouldn't be sitting today, if you were to go home, you wouldn't be sitting with somebody you love or a family member or a friend watching TV, watching a movie tonight, and all of a sudden a man comes in the house, a man you've never seen before in your life, and they grab this person you love. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your kid, maybe it's your friend. They grab this person that you love, and they start to drag them by the hair out the door. You're not going to just sit there and watch that happen, are you? And yet we sit and we watch pride destroy our lives. And most of us are convinced that we don't even have a problem, that we're not the ones in the wrong. And this imposter is destroying our relationships. So today what we're doing is we're focused in on how to kill pride. We don't want to dial it back a little bit. We don't want to understand it and avoid it some. We want to kill it. When I was in Missouri, I was at a church there, and we had a daycare, which like 120 kids were at this daycare. And it was a nice spring day, and all the kids were out, and it's near my office. And all of a sudden, I heard all the kids screaming. Ah! And I'm sitting in my office, and then all of a sudden, one of the daycare workers runs up to the door, and she says, you got to come out here, and you got to kill a snake. There's a snake out there. So I was like, okay. And this was actually pretty common. So I run out there and go out there. But it was interesting because it was a tree, and there was a hole about that far up on the tree. And the snake was inside the tree. Some kid about that big had walked up and poked a stick in there and figured out there was a snake in there. They had to go change his britches. Anyway, so there was a snake, and I was like, oh, we don't need to worry about it. It's a big playground. Just he'll come out eventually, and then we'll stick something in there so he can't get in there. Like, no, you need to kill it right now. And I was like, I kind of wanted you to say that. So what we got to do? We got to get some fire, right? So went and got some gasoline, because that's all I had. Actually, my house was on the property, so I had a jug up there. So I go get a gasoline and some shovel and a lighter, and because that's just how you do it, right? So get up there and pour some gasoline in the hole, and all the kids, 120 daycare kids and about 20 employees are all gathered around. I mean, it's the big show in Mount Vernon, Missouri. So we get all ready, and we pour the gas in there. We light it up. Like half the tree starts to, burn, and the bark and the sap catch on fire, and it's a pretty steady fire. And the snake doesn't do anything, so we just sit there watching it, and then all of a sudden you see this head start to poke out through the fire. I wish I would have had a video recorder. It was very cool, but he was just poke his head out through the fire, and then he'd go back in. I have no idea how big this thing is. He comes out again, he comes back in, goes like that. One time he tried to go all the way out, and then he decided not to do it. So he goes all the way out. He comes out about that far, and then he goes all the way back in. I'm like, man, this thing is big. This is going to be Big black rat snake. So finally, I had to pour a little more gas on the fire, which you're not supposed to do unless you don't have any other option. So anyway, throw some more gas on the fire, and eventually this snake just comes out all at once. Just, I'm not kidding you, it was about a foot wider than my wingspan here. It was the biggest black rat snake I had ever seen in my life. It falls out on fire, and all the kids scream, "Ah!" And then I grab a shovel that I have, right, and I go over there, and all the kids are like, "Ah!" and they're backing up, and I just kind of chop. You want to feel like pretty awesome in front of a group of people. Bunch of kids cheering you on. Chop the head off a snake in front of 100 kids, right? So just going, bam, chop the head off. And then I did what you always do. If you ever kill a snake in front of a group of people, this is just always the right protocol. You walk up to it, and you grab it by the tail, and then you pretend like it's still alive and throw it in the air. Wah! You throw it like that, and everybody goes running and screaming like crazy. Anyway, so we kill this thing, and it's dead. And I just want to tell you, you got a snake in your tree, and it's pride, and it's killing you, and it's killing everybody, and it's crowding out your relationship with God. And we don't want to just deal with a little bit. We want to smoke it out, and we want to kill it. I would encourage you to come every single week of this series. We're going to jump into Luke chapter 22. This is how we start killing pride. Luke 22, verse 24. A dispute also arose among them as to which of them was considered to be the greatest. Now, this is the disciples. This is the bigwigs. This is the people that Jesus hand-selected. They have been with Jesus his entire life and ministry. They finally get to the night, this is important, the night before Jesus is going to display the greatest act of humility ever. He is going to voluntarily be betrayed, voluntarily be mocked and beaten and treated like a human doormat by Roman officials, by Jewish officials, by soldiers. He's going to be whipped and he's going to be crucified to display and define for us real humility. And on that night, before he does all of that, his disciples are arguing about which one of them is the greatest. What does that conversation even look like? What does that even look like to have that? I can't imagine that Matthew is just like, well, you know, Jesus, he sat down by me the other day, right? So I'm probably the greatest. Peter's like, did he ask you to walk out to him on water? Did he ever ask you to do that? Because he asked me to do that? I think that is very literally the conversation they're having. Did you know when he got done with the baskets of bread and he had 12 left over, guess who he gave that to? He gave it to his favorite. That's who he gave it to. At the Last Supper, it says that John is actually sitting next to Jesus with his head on his chest. John did that. John walked up, and they sat down on these little tables that they had, and he actually laid down next to Jesus with his head on Jesus' shoulder. And you know what? Until I read this passage, I didn't think, and he's probably looking at all the other disciples going, who's number one now? Yeah. They were having a conversation about who was the greatest. And they had had this conversation before. And you and I, we have that same argument all the time. And we don't do it as out loud, like we don't go back and forth and be like, I'm better than you are, and you know it, right? We don't do that unless we're playing a game or something. We don't normally have that, but we're having that argument all the time. Just think about it, just when it comes to our cars, just our cars. I was never so excited in my life to buy a car. I had saved up my whole life, and when I turned 17, I went and bought all my life savings, worked on the farm my entire life. I bought a $7,000 truck, and I was proud of it. I was excited. It was better than most of the other kids in the high school. It was better than what they had. I was excited about. I was feeling like, I've got a pretty good deal. I drive into town, show off my new truck. It's a Ford. Most of my friends are Chevy guys. That it doesn't matter that it's worth $6,000 more than their truck. They're like, that's a Ford piece of crap, right? That was their response. Okay, so none of my Chevy friends like it. And then my Ford friends, what do they say about it? It's two-wheel drive. Two-wheel drive's nothing, man. And like that, I got one compliment from buying this. It saved my whole life for this $7,000 truck. I got one compliment from the quarterback of the football team. Do you know why that's significant? Because I was his center. You always compliment the big guy that blocks for you, right? Even the only compliment I got was insincere, and I was brought to that crushing blow that nobody cares. And we're out there buying vehicles to impress people that aren't even paying attention. We're out there trying to do things to impress people that aren't even paying attention. But I want to be clear about this. It's not just stuff, right? It's houses and it's cars and it's clothes and stuff like that. But maybe somewhere in the process, you know that you're never going to be that one person that has that really nice car that impresses everybody. You know that you're not going to be that person. But you know, and you try to be the smartest person in the room. You win every argument you've ever had, whether you're right or not. Pride raises itself up in so many ways, and we're constantly having this argument with other people. And really, at the bottom of the line, it's the same childish argument that the disciples were having. We're saying, hey, I'm better than you. And then when we see somebody else that's better than us, all of a sudden we try to be something different and something more so that we can somehow end up at the winning side of that argument. It says they had this argument, and Jesus knew what they were thinking. And so Jesus said this to him. He said, the kings of the Gentiles, in other words, just people that aren't Jewish, he's looking out at the people and he's saying, hey, the people that don't even have a relationship with God, people that aren't even trying to follow God. The kings of the Gentiles, they lord it over them. They walk around in their kingly robes and are like, hey, I'm better than you, and I just wanted you to remind you of that. And those who exercise authority over them call themselves benefactors. So the people that are like, hey, I'm never going to be a king, but I've got a lot of money and I've got a lot of prestige and a lot of power, and I'm over the top of the kings even. And Jesus is drawing attention to this pecking order, this pyramid, right? And it says, hey, the little guy's down here, and then there's a little bit bigger guy, and there's a bigger guy up here, and we're all trying to get up this pyramid. Jesus is saying, hey, yeah, that's the way the world works. And we all know that. We experience that day in and day out. And we all play the game where we're like trying to go and follow that. And Jesus says this line that should change everything. At the most basic understanding of following God, he says this, but you are not to be like that. Everybody else on the planet is like that. But you, my followers, my disciples, the people that have walked with me, you don't want to be like that. Not only do you not want to be, you cannot be like that and be my disciple. And then he takes this paradigm and he completely turns it on its head. And he simply says this, instead, the greatest among you should be like the youngest, and the one who rules like the one who serves. The one who rules like the one who serves. And he continues on. He gets this. For who is greater? I feel like he's really breaking this down here. He's like, hey, let me put this in small terms. Who is greater? The one who is at the table or the one who serves? Saying, okay, so you got a guy sitting at the table, and he's the fat cat, he's the one that's eating, and then you've got this servant that's out here. Which one of them is more important according to this paradigm? And then he's like, it's the one that sits at the table. Like, yeah, we thought that was the right answer. Okay, yeah, the one sitting at the table is more important. He says, but listen, let me break it down as small words as I can. But I am among you as one who serves. So the paradigm is the guy at the table getting served. Everybody says he's the most important one, but I, the one who created you, most powerful being that's ever existed, I serve. I'm the one at the table. And I bet they really didn't get that. I bet they heard that and they were like, okay, all right. Sure, that sounds good. I can dish out some olives, you know. I can go get the relish tray. When there's no ketchup at the table, I can go get the ketchup. Jesus is like, no, it's way bigger than that. He says, here's what I mean by serve. And it isn't until later in the book of like Philippians that we really understand. Philippians chapter 2, it describes what it meant that Jesus served. It says this, he, Jesus, being in the very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. The reason we still talk about Jesus 2,000 years later, the reason he's not like just anybody else that's ever existed is because he redefined true humility. He came as one who serves, and in serving, he died on a cross for us, the ultimate act of humility. And to follow Jesus means that you have the same attitude. And if you don't have the same attitude, then you may go to church, you may even call yourself a Christian, you might identify yourself that way, but it literally means to follow Jesus is to follow that same act and to lay your life down in the same way. Now, here's what I want to kind of hook in your heart. I don't know if I can fix our pride issues all in one night. I don't know if I could do that, but I think we can get a really good start. I think that this week, if I could just leave you with 3 questions. Here's the big 3 questions. I actually heard these asked by another preacher this week, and I just went, those are too perfect. I was going to reword them. I'm like, no, it's too perfect. Here's the 3 questions I would have you ask yourself today and for the rest of the week deeply. First one, how does pride manifest itself in you? Because I do believe it's different for different people. And honestly, that's a question you may not be able to answer. But I bet you know somebody who could. Am I right? Now think about it. What more humble exercise could you do? And right now, even as I'm getting ready to say it, there's a prideful ball in your stomach going, there ain't no way, ain't no how I'm going to do that. But what more humble thing that you do than turn to your spouse or turn to somebody that you care about or turn to somebody that you respect, or heck, you don't even have to respect them. Just turn to somebody and say, hey, how have you seen pride? You probably want to wait till the end of the lunch so you don't ruin the whole meal, but just turn to them and say, hey, how have you seen pride manifest itself in me? And then, what more humble exercise could you possibly do than to ask that question and then sit there and shut up while they tell you? Right? Just sit there, and because you're going to want to argue with them and be like, it's not me. Just sit there and listen to what they say. Figure that out. This week, as you leave, if you really want to kill pride, not avoid it, not talk about it, not identify it, but kill it, try to figure that out. How does pride manifest itself in you? Number 2, and this is closely follows, how does pride masquerade in your life? Because that's what it's really good at. It's just like that snake in that hole. It just kind of hangs back. It would just as soon you forget it was even there, so it puts on a face, and we buy into it. And you might say, well, I'm just confident. No, you're arrogant. We have all kinds of different ways to describe it and put it in practice. Well, that's not me. That's not pride. How does it pretend? How does it lie? How does it look in your life? Because I can guarantee you it is lying in that way. 3rd question. How long do you plan on following it? Like some of you are like what they call kind of old. And you've been doing this a long time, and it's actually, I hate to say this because I'm kind of in the middle ground. I'm not real young, but I'm not super old, so I say this super respectfully. It's getting kind of worse, isn't it? Isn't pride, instead of like all the stuff that you've dealt with in life humbling you more and more, isn't it actually more of a problem than it's ever been? Isn't it dig deep down in you, and does it become more and more of a problem? Like, how long are you going to do this? How are you going to watch it happen? How long are you going to follow it? I just want to tell you, you leave here today, figure it out, see how it works. And then I implore you, I beg you for your own sake, kill it. Let me pray for you.